But on March 8, 1992, a full year since Randy's stand had begun, a nearby newspaper from Spokane, Washington, publishes a front-page article about a local fugitive snubbing his nose at the federal government. Within days, the story catches the eye of the national media. Randy Weaver, and the tough talk coming from his remote mountain, quickly becomes a thorn in the side of the Marshal Service.
You put up a bluff. You ever played poker?
Back in Washington, the U.S. Marshal Service is raising the stakes. 3 weeks after the first story is printed, a special meeting is held at Marshal's headquarters. Based on neighbors' warnings, the now numerous news reports, and the growing mythology surrounding the Weavers, this remote cabin in the Idaho woods becomes the center of a complex surveillance and apprehension plan dubbed Operation Northern Exposure. During the next 5 months, the Marshal Service records over 100 hours of surveillance footage from solar-powered cameras strategically planted around the Weaver property.
It's a total invasion of privacy, you know? It's like if my brother would have found out some of the stuff I did, you know? I'd be embarrassed enough, let alone the government.
The surveillance clearly shows that the Weavers are almost always armed and seem to be prepared for some kind of confrontation. The cameras also show the family now joined by Kevin Harris, a 23-year-old man from Spokane who had lived with the Weavers as a teenager and looks up to Randy as a father figure. As surveillance escalates, so does media coverage. The national press seems drawn to the Weaver story. Randy is billed as a local folk hero, and his plywood cabin is transformed into a mountaintop fortress.
It became blatantly obvious they were being watched, but yet they kept waiting for someone to come to their door.
In the early morning hours of August 21st, 1992, a team of 6 deputy U.S. Marshals, fully armed and outfitted with night vision goggles, hike up the Weavers' Hill to gather intelligence for the final phase of Operation Northern Exposure. After 8 hours of surveying the terrain and watching the Weavers, their day is done and they begin to sneak back down the mountain. But for some reason, things don't proceed as planned. And in the hurried confusion, tragedy is about to strike.
Our yellow lab striker was so worked up and excited that I figured it had to be probably a mountain lion or a bear. And Kevin and Sam come down around behind and followed me. And I said, well, I'm going to go down the logging road and I'll meet you down at the Y. And they was following the dog through the woods. Actually, I didn't know which way the dog was going to go for sure, but I wasn't going to go tramping off through the woods chasing the dog. Getting old and lazy, you know.
14-year-old Sam Weaver and Kevin Harris, 23, both armed and anticipating a wild animal, split off from Randy and chased the dog through the woods.
And I got about maybe right to here, and some guy jumped from the right side of the Y there down, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 foot right down in the center there. I could tell he had a weapon, and he was fully camoed out. All I could see basically was his eyes, and I saw his mouth move. He yelled at me, he said, "Freeze, Weaver." I said, "Screw you," and turned and started running back up the hill. And I was yelling all the time. I said, "Get home, boys, it's an ambush."
The boys don't hear Randy, and they continue chasing the dog through the woods until they come upon the Marshals. Sam Weaver's dog, Striker, reaches the Marshals first.
And I heard a bang. Arr, arr, arr. They shot the dog, they shot the dog.
In the next few seconds, a flurry of panicked gunfire breaks out between the Marshals and the boys. And amidst the chaos, a deputy U.S. Marshal is shot and killed.
I said, get home, and Sam yells, "I'm coming, Dad," and then there was a bunch more shooting, and took my shotgun, aimed it up in the air, and pulled the trigger, and straight up in the air, I didn't know what to do. It was after that, it was like everything was over with.
With an officer down in unfamiliar territory, 2 of the deputies that were not in the gunfight run for nearly an hour through the woods and down the hill to the nearest neighbor, where they make a frantic call to 911.
I got one officer dead. I got 3 pinned down. I need help quick. We had an incident with Randy Weaver. I want the state police. I want all the help here I can get. I've got to go back in for more officers that are trapped.
But the officers are not trapped. In fact, the Marshals are completely unaware that the Weavers have also suffered a loss.
I got home pretty shortly, and then a little shortly after that, Kevin come walking home, and we said, "Where's Sam?" And he said, "Sam's dead."
Samuel Weaver, Randy and Vicky's 14-year-old son, was killed in the firefight, shot once in the arm and once through the back.
When Kevin said Sam's dead, well, we just lost it. You know, we were up there and we were just, I mean, I was cussing and screaming and crying and combination. Nobody yelled at us, nobody shot at us. I figured these guys had split the scene.
Randy, Vicky, and Kevin bring Sam back up the old logging road to their cabin, where they clean his wounds and place his body in the same shed where his baby sister, Elishaba, was born just 10 months before.
The last thing I remember about my brother was he had gone down to the garden. He had his own special radish patch, and I started to follow him down there, and he's all, "Go away, leave me alone, I want to be alone." And so there was an uprooted stump over here, and I went behind it and I started crying, and he came over and he apologized to me. And that was the first time he'd ever apologized to me for making me leave and making me cry, you know. And it was just, you know, it's a great thing to remember, I guess. That the last moment that you remember your brothers like that.
Meanwhile, caught off guard and ill-prepared to handle a federal situation, local law enforcement evacuates the neighbors and closes off the entire mountain.
Because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea. This was something that I had not been schooled in or prepared for in any way, shape, or form.
The news of federal officers pinned down by gunfire deep in the Idaho woods was quickly reaching Washington. And the one thing the Marshal Service was trying so hard to avoid, an armed conflict with children, was now right in front of them.
I got 3 pinned down. I need help, quick.
Good afternoon. A federal agent has been shot and killed in a confrontation with a fugitive in North Idaho. Weaver, a fugitive on a federal firearms
Whenever a federal officer is killed, government policy dictates that the matter be turned over immediately to the FBI. But on August 21st, 1992, the FBI had never heard of Ruby Ridge or Randy Weaver. All they knew was what they were hearing from the panicking marshals.
Got a call from FBI headquarters, and he advised there had been a shooting up at Ruby Ridge and that a marshal had been killed. The marshals were pinned down. We basically had 2 functions going up there. One was the rescue of the marshals, and the other one was the arrest of Randy Weaver.
The situation, as presented, leads to the decision to call in the FBI's secret weapon, the Hostage Rescue Team, or HRT. Perhaps the most elite squad of snipers and assaulters in the world. And on the way out to Idaho, somewhere over the Great Plains, Dick Rogers, the head of the HRT, in consultation with FBI Assistant Director Larry Potts, agreed that the possibility of entering an ongoing gunfight, combined with the intelligence they were receiving on the Weaver family, warranted extreme measures. They begin to draft special rules of engagement to give the snipers more freedom than the standard FBI shooting policy, an action unprecedented in FBI history. But the threat of a firefight has long since subsided, and the marshals are finally taken safely down the hill with the help of the Idaho State Police.
I had a bad feeling about this situation before I even left home. But, you know, I'd been in 300 plus situations, and, you know, I remember now saying to my wife, "Boy, I don't feel good about this one." And turned out to be an accurate vibe.
On Saturday morning, almost 24 hours after the initial firefight, as law enforcement from all over the region mobilized to the remote hilltop, a briefing is held with FBI negotiators, the HRT's tactical team, and on-scene commander, Gene Glenn.
Gene Glenn is in charge, and in theory, the way the FBI manages is the negotiation team leader makes his recommendations, and the tactical team leader makes his recommendations, and the on-scene commander makes his decision from there.
But with the mere presence of Dick Rogers and the HRT, the question as to the seriousness of the situation seems to have already been answered.
Kind of almost reverse psychology, you know. If they're here, it must be bad. Whereas if we sent out a county team of 5 guys and a couple of negotiators, you know, this is nothing, a barricaded subject. But if these guys are on scene, whoa, you know, this is something bad's about to happen here.
Perhaps the most intimidating show of power is the FBI's use of the tank-like armored personnel carrier, or APC, the appearance of which begins to have a startling effect on the locals, typical Western individualists who don't take kindly to intimidation.
Son of a bitches! Come on!